My name is Rachel Miller, and if there's one thing I've learned in the last 3 years, it's that being a single mom in America isn't for the faint of heart. You don't get days off, you don't get someone else to lean on, and you don't get the luxury of falling apart when everything feels too heavy. Because when you've got two little faces looking up at you, trusting you to be both mom and dad, you have no choice but to keep going. I'm 38 years old, and I work as a receptionist at a dental clinic here in Ohio. It's not glamorous, and it doesn't pay much, but it covers most of the bills if I pinch every penny. Rent, groceries, gas, every dollar is stretched thin, but somehow, we make it work. Some nights it's macaroni and cheese instead of takeout pizza, and sometimes birthdays are handmade cakes instead of fancy parties, but my kids have never gone without love. My son, Liam, is 10. He's quiet, thoughtful, and the kind of boy who'll stay up late reading under his blanket with a flashlight because he just can't put a book down. He's also shy, so when he told me he'd landed his first speaking role in his school play, my heart nearly burst with pride. My daughter, Emily, is 8, bubbly and bright, the type who makes friends everywhere she goes. She doesn't have a role in the play this year, but she's just as excited to sit in the audience and cheer for her big brother. For weeks, our little apartment has been filled with the sound of Liam practicing his lines. He'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror, rehearsing with so much seriousness that Emily and I would sneak peeks and try not to giggle. He'd catch us and roll his eyes, but I could see the corners of his mouth twitch into a smile. The night of the play was circled on my calendar in red marker. I knew nothing, not bills, not work, not exhaustion, was going to stop me from being there. Because that's what I promised myself after the divorce. No matter how messy life got, my kids would never doubt for a second that I was present. But as excited as I was for Liam, there was a knot in my stomach I couldn't shake. I knew my ex-husband, David, would be there. And where David goes, his new wife, Vanessa, is always by his side. David and I divorced 3 years ago. He left me for Vanessa, a woman 10 years younger, with glossy hair, designer handbags, and the kind of confidence that comes from never worrying about a grocery budget. The wound of betrayal has healed enough for me to live my life, but every time I see them together, it feels like someone presses on a bruise that never fully faded. And it's not just seeing them, it's how they treat me. David has this way of puffing up his chest, trying to prove he's the better parent because he can afford to spoil the kids with expensive gadgets and trips I could never give them. Vanessa, on the other hand, is more subtle but just as cruel. She's mastered the art of the backhanded comment, the kind that cuts deep while being disguised as concern. Things like, "Oh, Rachel, it must be so hard keeping up with 2 kids all by yourself. You must be exhausted." Or, "It's such a shame the kids can't enjoy more luxuries, but I guess you're doing your best." So yes, I was nervous about the play. Not because of Liam, I knew he'd shine, but because I could already imagine the looks, the whispers, the comments that would come from David and Vanessa sitting just a few rows behind me. The day of the play, I left work early. I didn't have much to wear, just a simple navy blue cardigan and black slacks, but I pressed them carefully, wanting to look neat for my son. I tied my hair back, put on a touch of mascara, and grabbed my old coat from the hook by the door. Emily twirled around in her pink dress, proud to be audience ready, while Liam clutched his script, muttering his lines under his breath as we drove to the school. When we arrived, the parking lot was already filling up with SUVs and minivans. Parents hurried inside, carrying bouquets of flowers for their little stars. I didn't have money for flowers this time, but I'd promised Liam his favorite ice cream after the show. That would have to do. We walked into the auditorium, the air buzzing with excitement. Rows of folding chairs stretched across the gym floor, the smell of popcorn drifting from the concession table set up by the PTA. Kids peeked out from behind the stage curtains, their costumes crooked, their faces painted with nervous smiles. I found seats near the front, where Liam could see me clearly when he looked out into the audience. Emily plopped down beside me, swinging her legs and humming to herself. I smoothed my coat over my lap, feeling a wave of calm wash over me. For once, it felt like nothing else mattered except this moment, my son on stage, my daughter beside me, and me right where I was supposed to be. But then, just as the lights dimmed for the opening announcements, I heard laughter behind me. That familiar voice. David's. And then Vanessa's sharp, tinkling laugh cutting through the air like glass. My shoulders stiffened. I didn't have to turn around to know it was them. I could feel their presence like a cold draft at the back of my neck. Emily leaned against me and whispered, "Mom, Daddy's here." I smiled down at her, squeezing her hand. "That's okay, sweetheart. We're here for Liam. Let's just focus on him." But inside, my stomach knotted tighter. I had prayed tonight would just be about my son's big moment. But deep down, I already knew, David and Vanessa never came just to watch. They came to perform, too. And their stage was humiliating me. And so, as the curtain rose and the play began, I braced myself, not just for Liam's lines, but for the storm I knew was brewing in the seats behind me. The principal's voice came over the microphone, warm and cheery, welcoming all the families to an evening of hard work and talent from our amazing students. The audience clapped, and I clapped along, though my palms felt clammy. I tried to fix my eyes on the stage, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't block out the presence sitting behind me. David had always been the kind of man who needed the room to know he had arrived. Even in the dimly lit auditorium, I could hear his low chuckle, his way of speaking just a little too loud so others would turn and notice. And then there was Vanessa, with her perfume so strong it nearly masked the smell of popcorn. She shifted in her seat, the swish of her silk blouse loud in my ears. I focused on Emily beside me. She was wriggling in her seat, craning her neck to spot Liam backstage. "Do you think he can see us, Mom?" she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "He knows exactly where we're sitting. He'll be looking for us." She grinned, satisfied, and leaned back against me. That small gesture steadied me. I reminded myself, this night wasn't about David. It wasn't about Vanessa. It was about Liam. The play began with the younger grades singing, their little voices squeaky and sweet. Parents laughed and clapped, cameras flashing, the kind of community moment that made small-town schools feel like family. I relaxed for a few minutes, soaking in the warmth, letting the joy of the other children's parents distract me. But during a lull, when the stagehands shifted props, I heard Vanessa's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. "Rachel, is that you up there in the front row?" she called, not loudly enough for the whole auditorium, but just enough for the surrounding rows to hear. I froze. Slowly, I turned halfway in my seat, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, Vanessa." "Hi, David." She beamed at me with that overly sweet smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "How wonderful of you to make it. I wasn't sure you'd have time off from, what was it again? The dental clinic?" I felt the blood rush to my face. "Yes. I made it," I said simply, turning back toward the stage. But Vanessa wasn't done. "So dedicated, isn't she?" she said to David, though she made sure I could hear. "Some women really try their best, even when they're all alone." David chuckled. "Well, at least she shows up." The word stung, but I forced myself to stay still, hands folded tightly in my lap. Emily looked up at me, her little brows pinched together. "Mommy," she whispered, "why are they being mean?" I brushed her hair from her face and kissed the top of her head. "Don't worry about it, sweetie. Just watch the play." Inside, though, my chest ached. It wasn't just their words, it was the way people nearby leaned ever so slightly, pretending not to listen but clearly soaking it in. In small towns, whispers travel fast, and humiliation can spread like wildfire. The lights shifted, signaling Liam's class was next. My heart leapt into my throat as the kids filed onto the stage, dressed in makeshift costumes, paper hats, painted cardboard props, all the creativity of dedicated teachers and PTA moms. And there was Liam, third from the left, holding his prop sword, standing taller than I'd ever seen him. My sweet, shy boy, ready to speak his lines. I sat up straighter, my eyes locked on him. For a moment, everything else blurred away. Then Vanessa leaned forward, her voice a hissed whisper. "Do you think his coat even fits? He looks like he grew right out of it." Shame. David chuckled again. Well, at least he's not hiding in the corner like last year. Guess Rachel finally practiced with him. My fists clenched in my lap. I wanted to spin around, to tell them to shut their mouths, to remind them that I was the one sitting with Liam night after night, helping him memorize his lines. That I was the one who cut his sandwich into triangles because he said it made him braver at school. That I was the one who stayed up late sewing that too-tight coat into something he could wear one more season. But I didn't. Because if I said a word, Liam might look out and see me arguing, not smiling. And tonight, my smile mattered more than my pride. The children began their lines, stumbling over words, their voices echoing through the gym. Parents laughed softly, cheered, clapped, took photos. When Liam's turn came, my heart nearly stopped. He stepped forward, cleared his throat, and said his lines with a strength I'd never heard from him before. His voice carried, confident, steady. My eyes filled with tears. My boy. My brave boy. Emily clapped furiously beside me, whispering, "That's my brother. That's my brother." I laughed through my tears, pulling her close. For a moment, the noise behind me vanished. I didn't care about David or Vanessa, or their snide remarks. All I saw was Liam, glowing under the stage lights, standing taller than the world. But when his scene ended and the applause faded, David's voice rose again, low and smug. "Well, I guess he managed. But imagine what he could do if he lived with us full-time. Private school, tutors, he'd be a star." Vanessa giggled, adding, "Some kids are just meant for more, aren't they? Too bad some parents can't provide it." The words burned, and I felt the weight of the other parents' eyes again. My cheeks flushed hot, and for the first time that night, anger boiled up inside me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my children. And I knew it was only a matter of time before I'd have to say something. Because if David and Vanessa thought they could humiliate me in front of my kids, in front of this community, they had another thing coming. When the curtain closed for intermission, the auditorium buzzed with chatter. Parents stood, stretching their legs, heading toward the cafeteria for cookies and coffee. Emily tugged at my hand, eager to go see the refreshment table, while Liam waved shyly from backstage before disappearing with his classmates. I stood up, smoothing my thrift store skirt, reminding myself this night was about Liam, about celebrating his courage on stage. But the sound of heels clicking behind me made my stomach twist before I even turned. "Rachel!" Vanessa's sing-song voice cut through the crowd. "Don't rush off. We should catch up." I forced a tight smile. "I'm taking Emily to get a snack." "Excuse me." But Vanessa wasn't one to let her prey escape. She stepped closer, David looming just behind her, his arm casually slung around her waist like a trophy. "Oh, but I insist," she said, her voice rising just enough that heads began to turn. "David and I were just saying how proud we are of Liam. He's really blossomed, hasn't he? Shame it took this long." My heart hammered. People nearby slowed, pretending to fix their coats or check their phones, but really hanging on every word. Small-town school events were like that, gossip wrapped in PTA smiles. David smirked. "We've been talking about it, Rachel." about how much Liam would benefit from more stability. Vanessa and I have a routine. A real home. I bristled. Liam has a home. With me. He's thriving. Vanessa tilted her head, her glossy hair falling perfectly into place. Of course, you're doing your best. But really, raising 2 kids on a receptionist's paycheck? It's a wonder you keep the lights on. The words echoed louder than the hum of voices around us. I felt Emily's little hand tighten in mine. She looked up at me with wide eyes, confusion written all over her face. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from fury. I wanted to lash out, to shout that they had no idea the sacrifices I made. How I stretched every dollar until it frayed. How I skipped meals so the kids never had to. How I sewed Liam's too small coat to make it last another winter. But I swallowed the words. Not here. Not in front of my children. Instead, I straightened my shoulders. Excuse me. My daughter is hungry. I tried to walk past, but David blocked my way, his voice low but sharp enough for those near us to hear. Rachel, this little charade can't last. Everyone sees it. You're drowning. It's only a matter of time before the kids are better off with us. Gasps whispered through the crowd. I felt dozens of eyes on me, neighbors, teachers, other parents. Some with pity. Some with curiosity. And some with judgment. Emily pressed into my side, her face buried in my coat. My heart cracked, but I forced my chin up. I couldn't let them see me crumble. Not tonight. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Mrs. Jennings, Liam's teacher, watching from a few feet away. Her lips pressed thin, her eyes narrowed in disapproval, not at me, but at David and Vanessa. That small flicker of support gave me the strength to breathe again. I met David's stare. My children are loved. They're cared for. And they're not pawns in whatever game you're trying to play. Vanessa scoffed, her laugh sharp as glass. Game? Rachel, darling, this isn't a game. It's reality. And maybe one day, you'll thank us for stepping in where you've failed. The words landed like daggers. Around us, the buzz of conversation grew. Parents whispered, some shaking their heads, others watching like it was a spectacle put on just for them. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I wanted to scream, to throw their cruelty back at them. But then Emily's small voice rose against the crowd. My mommy doesn't fail, she said firmly, her little hands balled into fists. Her voice quivered, but it carried. She's the best mommy. She helps Liam with his homework. She makes pancakes on Sundays. She loves us. The crowd went silent. My eyes filled with tears. David's smirk faltered. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. I bent down, pulling Emily close, kissing her hair. My voice shook, but I made sure it was steady enough for everyone to hear. That's right, sweetheart. Love is what matters most. And we have plenty of it. Mrs. Jennings stepped forward then, her voice calm but firm. All right, folks. Let's let Rachel and her kids enjoy the evening without interruptions. Her tone left no room for argument. Relief washed over me as she gently guided us toward the cafeteria. Whispers still swirled behind us, but something had shifted. The humiliation David and Vanessa had tried to orchestrate had backfired. Instead of pity, I saw nods of support. A few mothers smiled at me knowingly, one even patting my shoulder as I passed. In the cafeteria, as Emily nibbled on a cookie, I leaned against the table, my hands trembling. The anger simmered under my skin, but so did something else, a spark. Tonight wasn't the end of their cruelty. I knew David. He would push harder, go further, especially if he thought he could win custody. But tonight also reminded me of something more important. My kids didn't see me as weak. They saw me as their anchor. Their safe place. Their strength. And if David wanted a fight, he was about to see just how strong a single mother could be. The Monday after the school play, the phone call came. I was sitting at my desk at Dr. Feldman's dental clinic, the scent of mint polish hanging in the air, when the receptionist transferred a call to me. "It's a Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice hesitant. "David's lawyer." The sound of his name made my stomach flip. I picked up slowly, pressing the receiver to my ear. "Ms. Carter," a polished male voice said. "This is Attorney James Reynolds. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. David Carter regarding preliminary discussions of custody modification." The words hit like a punch. My breath caught in my throat. Custody modification? Yes. Mr. Carter and his wife, Vanessa, have expressed concerns about the stability of the children's living arrangements. They believe it would be in the best interest of the children to reside primarily with their father. My hand gripped the desk so hard my knuckles whitened. My voice came out thin. Best interest? He hasn't been there. Not really. I've been raising them. "I understand this is difficult," Reynolds said smoothly, as if he were explaining the weather. "But Mr. Carter is prepared to move forward legally if necessary. I encourage you to seek counsel." I hung up before my trembling hands could drop the receiver. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the hum of the office around me. By the time I got home that evening, the kids were sprawled on the living room rug, crayons scattered everywhere. Liam was drawing a knight with a sword, Emily coloring a lopsided sun. Their laughter filled the room. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching, fighting back the sting of tears. How could anyone think they weren't safe here? I knelt beside them, smiling as best I could. "Looks good, guys." My voice wavered, but they didn't notice. They just beamed up at me, chattering about their pictures. That night, after I tucked them into bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of unpaid bills, the chipped laminate under my elbows. My chest ached with fear. Lawyers meant money, money I didn't have. And custody battles? They weren't just expensive. They were brutal. I poured myself a cup of coffee I couldn't afford and dialed my sister, Claire. She answered on the second ring. "Ratch? Everything okay?" "No," my voice cracked. "David's lawyer called today. He's going for custody." There was silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. "That snake. He hasn't lifted a finger for those kids beyond the bare minimum. He thinks he can just swoop in now?" I pressed a hand to my eyes. "He and Vanessa. They think they can give the kids a better life. Private school, tutors, all that. And me? They're painting me as barely scraping by." Claire's voice hardened. "Listen to me. You are the one who gets Liam up every morning. You're the one who helps Emily with her reading. You've kept those kids safe, loved, and happy. Don't let him rewrite the truth." "But the money." "Then we'll figure it out," she cut in. "You'll find a lawyer. Even if we have to sell Mom's old furniture sitting in the garage. You're not fighting this alone." Her certainty steadied me. For the first time since the phone call, I could breathe again. Over the next week, I gathered everything I could: school attendance records, doctor's notes, even photos of the kids at home, laughing and cared for. Every scrap of proof that I wasn't the struggling mess David wanted to paint me as. Meanwhile, David didn't waste time. He started parading Liam and Emily around town with Vanessa, ice cream trips, flashy new backpacks, dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford. And he made sure I knew. He'd send Liam home with receipts still stuffed in his pockets or Emily with a shiny new doll from Daddy and Vanessa. Each time, it twisted the knife deeper. They weren't toys. They were bribes. And my children were too young to see it for what it was. One night, after Emily fell asleep clutching her new doll, Liam sat beside me on the couch, unusually quiet. Finally, he said, "Mom, is Dad going to take us away?" My throat closed. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, pulling him close. "No one can take you from me. We're a team, remember?" He nodded, but his little face stayed clouded with worry. I kissed his forehead, silently promising him I would never let David win. But as I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, fear clawed at me. David had money. He had a lawyer. He had the arrogance to think he could erase me from my children's lives. I might not have much, but I had love, resilience, and the truth. And if David wanted a fight, I was ready to give him one. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and floor polish, a place where lives were picked apart and stitched back together under the cold gaze of the law. I'd never stepped foot in one until now, and the sight of the tall oak doors made my stomach lurch. Claire squeezed my hand as we walked inside. "You've got this, Ratch," she whispered. I nodded, though my knees felt weak. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa Perez, met us by the benches. She was sharp, calm, and direct, the kind of woman who looked like nothing rattled her. She adjusted her glasses and said quietly, "Remember, keep your answers clear. Don't let David's lawyer bait you. You're here for your kids. That's all that matters." I clutched my folder of documents like a lifeline, Liam's report cards, Emily's drawings, letters from their teachers, even a note from our pediatrician about how well they were doing under my care. Proof of what I already knew, I was the constant in their lives. The bailiff called the case. My breath caught as David walked in with Vanessa at his side, both of them dressed to impress. David wore a navy suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his posture smug. Vanessa's heels clicked like gunshots on the marble floor, her hair and makeup flawless. She looked less like a stepmother and more like she was heading to a magazine shoot. David glanced at me, his lips curving into that same smirk I'd seen at the school play. The message was clear: you don't stand a chance. We sat opposite each other as the judge entered, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She opened the file, scanning it briefly before looking up. "We are here to discuss Mr. Carter's petition for custody modification. Mr. Reynolds, you may proceed." David's lawyer stood, smooth as silk. "Your Honor, my client seeks custody of his children, Liam and Emily, not out of malice, but out of concern. The children are currently living in conditions that, while stable on the surface, fail to provide them with the opportunities and resources they deserve. Mr. Carter and his wife can provide a secure, affluent environment with access to private education, extracurriculars, and the stability of a two-parent household." I clenched my jaw, my hands gripping the table. Opportunities? Stability? Where was David when Emily had the flu and I sat up all night holding her hand? Where was he when Liam cried over a math test, and I coached him through it? Lisa rose. "Your Honor, while my opposing counsel paints a picture of affluence, the question before this court is not who can buy shinier toys. It is who has consistently provided care, love, and stability. Ms. Carter has been the children's primary caregiver since birth. She has balanced work and parenting alone, ensuring the children are thriving emotionally, academically, and socially. We have documentation from teachers, neighbors, and medical professionals to support this. The judge nodded, flipping through the file. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then David himself took the stand. He spoke smoothly, like he was giving a presentation at work. He talked about the trips he could afford, the private schools, the better future he could provide. At one point, he even gestured toward Vanessa and said, and with Vanessa's support, the children will have a nurturing female role model as well. I almost laughed at the irony of Vanessa, who mocked my son's coat, being painted as nurturing. When it was my turn, I felt my legs tremble as I stood. Lisa gave me a small nod, and I walked to the witness chair, swearing in with my right hand raised. The questions began: how I balanced work with parenting, how I paid the bills, what my daily routine with the kids looked like. I answered honestly, my voice wavering at first, then growing stronger with each word. I may not have wealth, I said, looking straight at the judge, but I have built a safe, loving home. My children know they are loved every single day. They know I will be there at every bedtime, every school play, every scraped knee. Money can't buy that kind of stability. David's lawyer pounced. Ms. Carter, isn't it true that you sometimes struggle to pay bills on time? Isn't it true that the children's coats are second-hand? That you've relied on handouts from family? My throat tightened, but I forced myself to meet his eyes. Yes. I've struggled. But those struggles have never meant my children went without love, without meals, or without safety. And every challenge we've faced has only made us stronger together. The judge's pen scratched across her notepad. I caught the faintest flicker of approval in her eyes. When it was over, I returned to my seat, my hands shaking. Claire squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "You did perfect." David looked rattled for the first time, shifting uncomfortably as Vanessa leaned in to whisper in his ear. His smirk had vanished. The judge cleared her throat. I will take this under advisement and issue a ruling shortly. But let me remind both parties, custody is about the best interests of the children, not egos, not finances. As the gavel struck, a wave of relief and exhaustion crashed over me. It wasn't finished, not yet. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like the truth had been heard. And I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't done fighting. The waiting was the hardest part. Days stretched into a week, then two. Every time the phone rang, my chest tightened. Every time Liam asked, "Did the judge decide yet?" I forced a smile and said, "Not yet, sweetheart. But soon." I tried to keep life normal. Pancakes on Sunday. Homework at the kitchen table. Bedtime stories curled together under the quilt my mother sewed years ago. But beneath it all was the constant hum of fear. What if David actually won? What if my children were taken from the only home they'd ever truly known? Then, on a Thursday afternoon, the letter came. I was folding laundry when I heard the mail truck rumble away. Emily ran to the door, her pigtails bouncing, and came back with a stack of envelopes. The thick one, stamped from the courthouse, nearly slipped from my hands as I opened it. My eyes scanned the page, the words swimming at first, until they sharpened into meaning. Custody to remain with the mother, Rachel Carter. Primary residence affirmed. Petition for modification denied. I sank into the kitchen chair, my hands trembling, tears spilling before I could stop them. Emily's face crumpled with worry. "Mommy? What is it?" I pulled her into my lap, hugging her tight. "It means we're okay, baby. We're staying together. Always." Her little arms wrapped around my neck, squeezing hard. I knew they wouldn't take us. When Liam came home from school, I told him too. Relief washed over his face, his shoulders relaxing in a way I hadn't realized had been tense for weeks. He grinned, shy but sure. So Dad can't make us move? I shook my head. No, sweetheart. This is our home. And it always will be. That night, I lit a candle at the kitchen table, the one my sister Claire had given me years ago, and we ate dinner by its glow, just spaghetti and garlic bread, but it felt like a feast. The kids laughed, Emily slurping noodles, Liam telling me about his science project. I sat back for a moment, just watching them, soaking in the warmth, the safety, the love. And I realized something. I had been so afraid of losing them that I hadn't stopped to see just how much we already had. A week later, I ran into David and Vanessa at the grocery store. They were by the produce section, Vanessa fussing over organic apples, David scrolling on his phone. He looked up when he saw me, his expression tightening. For once, there was no smirk. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably beside him, her confidence dimmed. They looked smaller somehow, less powerful. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply walked past, my cart squeaking, Emily chattering beside me about her favorite cereal. I held my head high, not out of arrogance, but out of peace. Because the truth had been seen. The court, the community, even David, whether he admitted it or not, knew now what I had always known. I wasn't just surviving. I was raising two strong, beautiful children with everything I had. And that was enough. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in me. I no longer felt like I was barely hanging on. Yes, money was still tight. Yes, life was still messy. But I had faced down the storm and come out stronger. At work, I spoke up more, asking for more hours, even suggesting improvements at the clinic. At home, I found joy in the small things again, Emily's crooked drawings taped to the fridge, Liam's quiet pride when he got a math problem right. One night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and let myself breathe. For the first time in years, I didn't feel crushed by fear of the next crisis. Instead, I felt proud. Proud of the woman who stood in that courtroom, trembling but unbroken. Proud of the mother who never let her children doubt for a second that they were loved. Proud of the single mom who had been underestimated again and again, but who refused to break. I looked at the Warren family photo on the fridge, me, Liam, and Emily at the park, smiling despite everything. And I whispered to myself, we made it. We're okay. Because this was our story. Not David's. Not Vanessa's. Ours. And no matter what came next, I knew one thing for sure, there is nothing more powerful than a mother fighting for her children. You've walked with me through every moment of this journey, through fear, through heartbreak, and finally through triumph. If my story touched your heart, if you've ever felt underestimated as a mother, I'd love for you to join me here. Please subscribe, like, and share this video, because no single mom should ever feel like she's fighting alone. Together, we are stronger than they'll ever know.